Jake Carter walked into his advanced alien biology class and took his usual seat in the back corner. The classroom was full of different alien species from across the galaxy. There were tall blue Altarians, scaly green reptoids, and furry Cathari, students all talking loudly about their weekend plans. Jake opened his notebook and waited for class to start. Professor Zendak, a six-armed Hexarian, entered the room carrying a stack of data tablets. His multiple eyes scanned the students as he began the lesson about predator species from the Outer Rim territories. Jake listened carefully and took notes, but he never raised his hand or joined the discussions like the other students. Today we will study the hunting patterns of the Nexari, Professor Zendak announced. The alien students leaned forward with interest. The Nexari were known as fierce warriors who conquered planets for sport. Can anyone tell me what makes them such effective killers? A reptoid student named Scar raised his clawed hand. They are born fighters. They have natural weapons and thick skin that can stop laser fire. Very good, the professor nodded. What else? A Cathari female called Whiskers spoke up. They hunt in packs and use surprise attacks. They never fight fair. Jake continued writing, in his notebook. He had studied the Nexari before, but not from textbooks. His hand moved steadily across the page, recording every detail the professor shared. Other students noticed that Jake never participated, but they assumed he was just shy or maybe not very smart. After class, Jake's roommate Zephyr caught up with him in the hallway. Zephyr was an Altarian with blue skin and silver hair who always tried to be friendly with everyone. Hey Jake, want to come to combat practice with us today? Zephyr asked. We're learning Krellian fighting techniques. It could be fun. Jake shook his head politely. Thanks, but I have studying to do. You always have studying to do, Zephyr laughed. Come on, when was the last time you did something fun? The Reptoid students are organizing a war game simulation tomorrow. You could join my team. I'm not really good at that stuff, Jake said quietly. I prefer books. Zephyr looked confused. In all the time they had been roommates, he had never seen Jake struggle with any subject. The human got perfect scores on every test and seemed to understand military tactics better than students who had been training their whole lives. But Jake always acted like he knew nothing about fighting or warfare. The next day in strategic studies class, things got interesting. Professor Krantz, a former military officer from the Valorian Empire, was teaching about ancient Earth battles. A Krellian student named Brutus stood up during the lesson. Professor, why do we waste time studying human warfare? Brutus asked with a sneer. His species looked like walking rocks with glowing red eyes. Humans are weak. They have no natural armor, no claws, no poison. They are prey animals, not predators. Some of the alien students nodded in agreement. Humans were one of the newer species in the galactic community, and many aliens saw them as soft and harmless. Humans have survived many wars, Professor Krantz replied calmly. They may not have natural weapons, but they are clever and adaptable. Brutus laughed, a sound like grinding stone. Clever? Maybe. But when real warriors come, humans run and hide. They are not built for fighting. Jake felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his eyes on his notebook. Around him, the few other human students looked uncomfortable. One of them, a girl named Lisa, tried to defend their species. Humans have won battles against stronger enemies before, Lisa said. We use strategy and technology. Tools and tricks, Brutus dismissed. A real warrior fights with strength and courage, not hiding behind machines. The argument continued, but Jake remained silent. He could feel some students looking at him, waiting to see if he would speak up for his species. Instead, he gathered his books and left the classroom early. Professor Krantz watched him go with curious eyes. That evening, Jake sat alone in his dorm room. Zephyr had gone to another combat training session with friends. The room was quiet except for the hum of the air recycler. Jake stared at his closet door, knowing what was hidden inside. He stood up and opened the closet. Behind his clothes was a small metal box, the kind used to store important documents. Jake had not opened it in 3 years, not since he first arrived at the university. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the box and set it on his desk. The lock opened with his fingerprint. Inside, wrapped in black cloth, were items from another life. There were his old dog tags on a chain, still bearing his name and service number. Next to them lay a collection of military ribbons and medals, each one representing a different battle or mission. At the bottom of the box was a photograph. Jake picked up the photo carefully. It showed 12 soldiers in combat armor, standing in front of a destroyed enemy fortress. Jake was in the center, younger and harder looking than he was now. The other soldiers were his unit, his brothers and sisters in arms. Most of them were dead now, killed in the final battle that ended the war. He traced the faces in the photo with his finger, remembering each name and how they died. Martinez, blown up by a plasma mine. Rodriguez, shot by a sniper while saving civilians. Thompson died holding off an enemy assault so the rest could escape. Good soldiers, good people, gone forever. Jake closed his eyes and remembered the last mission. The enemy had been brutal and showed no mercy to prisoners or civilians. His unit had been sent to stop them, no matter the cost. They succeeded, but the price was almost everything Jake cared about. After the war ended, Jake had tried to return to normal life. But normal seemed impossible after 8 years of constant fighting. The university had offered him a chance to start over, to be just another student learning about the galaxy. He took the offer and buried his past. Now, 3 years later, Jake lived a quiet life of classes and study. No one knew about his military service or the battles he had fought. To his classmates and professors, he was just a shy human who preferred books to combat training. They had no idea that the quiet student in the back row had once been one of the most feared soldiers in human space. Jake carefully put the items back in the box and locked it again. Tomorrow there would be more classes, more lessons about alien, species, and galactic politics. He would sit in the back, take notes, and let others do the talking. It was a peaceful life, and peace was all he wanted now. But as Jake prepared for bed, he could not shake the feeling that his peaceful days were numbered. In the military, he had learned to trust his instincts, and right now they were telling him that trouble was coming. Jake woke up to the sound of emergency alarms blaring across the university campus. Red warning lights flashed in his dorm room as he rolled out of bed. Zephyr was already up, his blue skin pale with worry. "What's happening?" Jake asked, though part of him already knew it was something bad. The alarms had a specific pattern that meant real danger, not just a drill. "Emergency broadcast," Zephyr said, pointing to the wall screen that was showing urgent news. Long-range sensors picked up a fleet heading straight for us. Jake watched the news report with growing concern. The reporter, a nervous Valorian with shaking tentacles, was reading from official statements. "The approaching fleet has been identified as Nexari raiders. They will reach Centauri Prime in approximately 72 hours. All students and staff are advised to prepare for immediate evacuation." The Nexari. Jake felt his blood turn cold. He knew that name very well, though he had hoped never to hear it again. During his military service, he had fought against Nexari raiders on 3 different worlds. They were not just pirates or criminals, they were something much worse. "We need to pack," Zephyr said, rushing to his closet. "My family can get us transport off-world. My father has connections with the merchant fleet." Jake nodded but did not move to pack. Instead, he was thinking about what he knew of Nexari tactics. They would not just attack the university. They would surround the entire system and hunt down any ships trying to escape. Standard evacuation procedures would not work against them. Students were running through the hallways outside their room. Jake could hear crying, shouting, and the sound of people frantically packing their belongings. Some alien students were calling their families, begging for rescue ships. Others were talking about fighting back. "Jake, come on," Zephyr urged. "We need to get to the transport hub before all the ships are full." "You go ahead," Jake said. "I need to check something first." Zephyr looked confused but nodded. "Okay, but don't take too long. I'll save you a spot on my family's ship." After Zephyr left, Jake went to the window and looked out at the campus. He could see the chaos spreading everywhere. Students from warrior species like the Krellians and Reptoids were gathering in groups, probably planning to fight. Others were rushing toward the spaceport with whatever belongings they could carry. Jake closed his eyes and tried to remember everything he knew about Nixari behavior. They were not random killers. They had patterns, strategies, weaknesses. But the information in his head was 8 years old. Military intelligence might have changed since then. He went to his closet and pulled out the metal box. This time he opened it without hesitation. Under the medals and photograph was something he had hoped never to use again. It was a small communication device, no bigger than his thumb. The device was connected to military channels that officially did not exist. Jake held the device in his hand, feeling its familiar weight. If he activated it, there would be no going back to his quiet student life. But if he did nothing, everyone on this world might die. He pressed the activation button. Ghost 7 to control. He spoke quietly into the device. Emergency authentication code, Tango 77 Alpha. There was a long pause. Then a voice he recognized answered. Ghost 7, this is Control. We thought you were dead. What's your situation? I'm at Centauri Prime University. Nexari raiders are incoming, 70 hours out. Civilian population needs immediate extraction. Understood. What's your assessment? Jake looked out the window again at the panicking students. Standard evacuation will fail. Nexari will have scout ships in position to intercept transports. Need alternative extraction plan. Stand by, Ghost 7. While he waited, Jake went to the common area of his dormitory. Students were gathered around the main screen, watching news reports. The situation was worse than he thought. The Nexari fleet was larger than first estimated. At least 50 ships, including heavy cruisers and assault carriers. A reptoid student named Blade was addressing the crowd. We should fight. My people have weapons stored in our cultural center. We can make the raiders pay for attacking us. Several other warrior species students agreed loudly. A Cathari female named Claw nodded her head. The Krellians have combat training facilities. We can hold defensive positions until help arrives. Jake wanted to tell them they were making a mistake, but he stayed quiet. The Nexari specialized in ground combat. They would not just bomb the university from orbit. They would land troops and hunt the students for sport. Untrained students with basic weapons would not last an hour against professional raiders. The communication device buzzed softly in his pocket. He stepped away from the crowd to answer. Ghost 7, we have 3 ships in range, but they cannot reach you for 36 hours. Can you hold until then? Negative, Jake replied. Nexari will be here in 72 hours. Your ships need to stay away until I signal. If they approach early, raiders will detect them and go to full alert status. Understood. What do you need? Jake thought carefully. I need tactical data on current Nexari fleet compositions and recent battle reports. Also need confirmation on Nexari ground assault patterns. Sending encrypted data package now. Ghost 7, are you planning what I think you're planning? Jake looked around at the scared students. Many of them were barely adults here to study art or science or diplomacy. They had never seen real combat, but they were going to die if someone did not help them. I'm going to try to keep them alive, Jake said. Ghost 7 out. He turned off the device and put it back in his pocket. Around him, students were still arguing about what to do. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to hide, and most just wanted to go home. Jake made his decision. He could not save everyone, but he might be able to save some. It would mean revealing who he really was, and it would mean returning to the life he had tried to leave behind. But looking at these young faces, he knew he had no choice. The quiet student was about to disappear forever. In his place, a soldier would have to return. Jake spent the next morning downloading and studying the military data sent to his communication device. The information was not good. The Nexari had improved their tactics since the war. They now used faster ships and better weapons. Worse, they had learned to coordinate their attacks better than before. He was reading battle reports when Zephyr returned to their room, looking tired and worried. The transport ships are full, Zephyr said sadly. My family could only get 1 seat, and they want me to take it, but I can't leave my friends behind. Jake looked up from his data pad. You should go. Your family is trying to save you. What about you? Zephyr asked. Don't you want to try to get off-world? I'm staying, Jake said simply. Zephyr stared at his roommate. Jake, this isn't a school assignment. These are real killers coming here. Students like us can't fight professional raiders. Jake did not answer. He was studying a map of the university campus, marking defensive positions and escape routes. His mind was already shifting into tactical mode, something he had not done in 3 years. That afternoon, Jake went to the main auditorium where students were holding an emergency meeting. The room was packed with hundreds of aliens from different species, all talking loudly and arguing about what to do. Lisa, one of the human students, was trying to speak from the stage. We need to work together. The evacuation ships can't take everyone, so we have to find another way. There is no other way, shouted Brutus, the Krellian student who had insulted humans before. We fight or we die. My people know how to fight. We will make our stand in the engineering building. Other students began arguing. The reptoids wanted to use the science labs as a fortress. The Cathari thought they should hide in the underground tunnels. Everyone had a different plan, and none of them were listening to each other. Jake watched from the back of the room. He could see the fear in their eyes, but also their determination. They wanted to survive, but they had no idea how to do it properly. Their plans would get them all killed. An Altarian student named Nova stood up. What about the humans? You've been quiet, don't you have any ideas? All eyes turned to the small group of human students. Lisa looked around nervously. We're not really fighters. Maybe we could help with communications or medical support? Brutus laughed his grinding stone laugh. See? I told you humans were weak. When danger comes, they want to hide behind others. Jake felt something snap inside him. He had stayed quiet for 3 years, letting people think humans were weak and harmless. But now these students were going to die because they did not understand what they were facing. He stood up slowly and walked toward the stage. The auditorium grew quiet as students noticed the change in his posture. Jake no longer moved like a shy student. He moved like a predator. You're all going to die, Jake said in a clear, strong voice that carried across the room. Every single one of you. Gasps and angry shouts filled the auditorium. Brutus stood up, his rock-like face twisted with rage. How dare you, human? If you're too scared to fight, then stay out of our way. Jake stepped onto the stage and activated the holographic display. With quick, precise movements, he began marking the campus map with tactical symbols. You want to make your stand in the engineering building? The Nexari will surround it and pump poison gas through the ventilation system. You'll be dead in 10 minutes. The room fell silent. Students stared at the tactical display, seeing their campus marked with attack vectors and defensive positions they had never considered. You want to hide in the underground tunnels? Jake continued, his voice cold and professional. The Nexari will flood them with plasma fire. The tunnels will become your tomb. Brutus stepped forward, his fists clenched. You speak like you know these raiders personally, human. How do you know so much about their tactics? Jake looked directly at the Krellian student. Because I've killed them before. The silence in the auditorium was complete. Even the air recycling system seemed quieter. Jake continued marking the display, showing proper defensive positions and escape routes. The Nexari are not just raiders, Jake explained. They're a military force that has conquered 47 worlds in the last 20 years. They don't just want your valuables. They want to hunt you for sport. Professor Krantz, who had been watching from the side, stepped forward. Student Carter, how do you know this information? Jake stopped marking the display and turned to face the crowd. Because I spent 8 years fighting them. I was a special operations commander in the Human Colonial Defense Force. My unit was called the Ghost Battalion. The reaction was immediate. Students began talking all at once, some in shock, others in disbelief. Several professors moved closer to the stage, staring at Jake with new understanding. That's impossible, Brutus said, but his voice was less certain now. You're just a student. You study books, not warfare. Jake reached into his pocket and pulled out his dog tags, holding them up for everyone to see. Commander Jake Carter, Colonial Defense Force, Service Number 7749 Delta Zulu. 8 years active duty, 12 major combat operations, veteran of the Hectoran War. Zephyr pushed through the crowd, his blue face pale with shock. Jake, is this real? You were a soldier? I was, Jake said. I came here to forget that life, to be just another student. But forgetting won't help you survive what's coming. He turned back to the tactical display. The Nexari fleet will arrive in 60 hours. They'll establish a blockade to prevent escape, then send ground forces to hunt survivors. Standard military doctrine says we should evacuate or surrender. Then what do we do? Lisa asked, her voice shaking. Jake looked out at the hundreds of students, seeing them differently now. Not as classmates or alien species, but as people under his protection. We fight, but we fight smart, not brave. We use the terrain, we use teamwork, and we use their overconfidence against them. He began explaining a real defensive plan, one based on actual military strategy rather than wishful thinking. As he spoke, the students began to see their campus as a battlefield and themselves as soldiers. This won't be easy, Jake warned them. Many of you will not survive. But if we work together, if we follow proper tactics, some of us can live through this. Professor Krantz stepped forward. What do you need from us, Commander? Jake looked at his former teacher, seeing respect in the alien's eyes where before there had been only academic interest. I need you to trust me. And I need you to understand that the quiet human student you knew is gone. From now on, you're dealing with a soldier. The transformation was complete. Jake Carter, the student, had disappeared, replaced by Commander Carter of the Ghost Battalion. The war had found him again, and this time he was ready. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of preparation. Jake organized the students into teams based on their natural abilities. The Reptoids, with their thick scales and strength, became heavy assault units. The Quick Cathari were assigned as scouts and messengers. The Altarians, with their advanced technology skills, handled communications and electronic warfare. Jake placed his command center in the main library building, the tallest structure on campus. From there, he could see the entire university and coordinate all defensive positions. He had turned the peaceful campus into a fortress with hidden weapon emplacements and carefully planned ambush points. Commander, Zephyr called out using Jake's military rank for the first time. Long-range sensors show the Nexari fleet dropping out of hyperspace. They'll be in weapons range in 2 hours. Jake nodded and activated his communication device. Control, this is Ghost 7. Enemy contact confirmed. Request immediate support. Ghost 7, 3 colonial defense ships are moving to intercept. Hold your position and transmit tactical data as available. The students around Jake looked nervous but determined. Over the past 2 days, they had seen their quiet classmate transform into a natural leader. Even Brutus, the proud Krellian warrior, now followed Jake's orders without question. Remember the plan, Jake announced over the campus-wide communication system. Let them land. Let them think they have easy prey. Then we show them what happens when you hunt humans and their friends. The Nexari ships appeared in the sky like dark clouds blotting out the sun. Jake counted them through his tactical scope. 37 vessels, just as his intelligence had predicted. They moved in the standard Nexari hunting formation, surrounding the planet to prevent escape. Phase 1 beginning, Jake reported to his teams. All units maintain radio silence until my signal. The first Nexari landing ships touched down in the main courtyard. Jake watched through his scope as armored raiders poured out of the ships. They looked exactly as he remembered. Tall, muscular humanoids with gray skin and red eyes carrying energy weapons and wearing black combat armor. The Nexari commander, distinguished by the skull decorations on his armor, surveyed the apparently empty campus. Jake could see him speaking into his communication device, probably reporting that the university appeared deserted. Overconfident, just like always, Jake muttered to himself. The Nexari began moving through the campus in small hunting groups, searching buildings for hiding students. They were following their standard pattern, the same one Jake had studied during the war. They expected their prey to cower in hiding places, making them easy to find and kill. Instead, they walked into carefully prepared kill zones. "Execute," Jake commanded. The campus erupted in coordinated attacks. Reptoid students emerged from hidden positions, their natural armor protecting them from the first wave of enemy fire. Cathari scouts used their speed and agility to attack from unexpected angles. Altarian students jammed the Nexari communication systems, leaving the raider squads isolated and confused. Jake watched the battle unfold from his command post, directing his student soldiers with calm precision. This was what he had been trained, for what he was born to do. The peaceful years at the university felt like a dream compared to this moment of clarity. Team 3. Enemy squad moving toward the science building. Intercept and eliminate. Team 7. Fall back to secondary positions. You're about to be flanked. All units. The enemy commanders in the main courtyard. Maintain pressure, but do not engage directly. The Nexari, elite warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, found themselves outmaneuvered by a group of college students. But these were not ordinary students anymore. Under Jake's leadership, they had become something more dangerous. A coordinated military force with nothing to lose. Brutus led his Krellian team in a direct assault on a Nexari strongpoint, his rock-like skin deflecting enemy fire while his team flanked the position. "For the honor of all students," he roared, smashing through enemy lines. Lisa and the other human students had proven themselves as well, using their intelligence and creativity to set traps and coordinate supplies. The idea that humans were weak had been completely forgotten in the heat of battle. After 2 hours of fighting, the tide began to turn. The Nexari forces used to easy victories against unprepared civilians were being systematically destroyed by organized resistance. Their commander began pulling his troops back to the landing ships. "They're retreating," Zephyr reported, monitoring enemy communications. "No," Jake said grimly. "They're regrouping for orbital bombardment. They'll destroy the campus from space rather than admit defeat on the ground." As if responding to his words, the Nexari ships in orbit began moving into bombardment positions. Jake knew they had perhaps 10 minutes before the first energy beam started falling. "Control, this is Ghost 7. Need immediate fleet support." "Enemy preparing orbital strike. Ghost 7, colonial ships engaging enemy fleet now. Hold position." In the sky above, streaks of light began appearing as the human fleet engaged the Nexari ships. Jake had provided detailed intelligence about Nexari fleet tactics, giving the colonial forces a crucial advantage. The enemy had expected to fight helpless civilians, not a coordinated defense backed by military intelligence. The space battle lasted only 30 minutes. The Nexari fleet, caught off guard and outmaneuvered, was systematically destroyed or driven off. The few surviving raider ships fled into hyperspace, leaving their ground forces stranded on the planet. Jake accepted the surrender of the Nexari commander personally. The proud warrior who had expected an easy victory now knelt before a human he had underestimated completely. "You fought well," the Nexari commander admitted in broken standard language. "I did not expect such resistance from prey species." "That's your first mistake," Jake replied. "Humans aren't prey. We're predators who learned to hide our teeth." In the days that followed, Jake found himself faced with a choice. The university offered him a position as Director of Strategic Studies, teaching the next generation of galactic citizens about military tactics and strategic thinking. The Colonial Defense Force wanted him to return to active duty, to help train their forces for future conflicts. Jake chose to stay at the university, but not as the quiet student he had once been. He became Professor Carter, teaching courses in military history and strategic planning. His classroom was always full, with students from dozens of species eager to learn from the human who had saved their world. Zephyr remained his closest friend, though their relationship had changed. The Altarian no longer saw Jake as a shy roommate who needed encouragement. Now he saw him as the warrior he had always been, hidden beneath a peaceful exterior. "Do you ever regret it?" Zephyr asked one evening as they sat in their old dorm room, now converted into Jake's office. "Giving up your quiet life?" Jake looked at the photograph on his desk. Not the old military photo, but a new one showing him with his students after the battle. Humans, aliens, former enemies all standing together as friends and comrades. I thought I wanted peace, Jake said. But I learned something during the battle. Peace isn't the absence of war. Peace is knowing you can protect the people you care about. He picked up his lesson plans for the next day's class, smiling as he read the names of his students. Among them were Brutus, who had become one of his most dedicated pupils, and Lisa, who was now studying to become a military strategist herself. The quiet human student was gone forever, but in his place stood something better: a teacher, a protector, and a bridge between the warrior and the scholar. Jake Carter had found his true calling at last.